Baddies! In this video, I'm going over different dough handling techniques for high hydration doughs. From mixing, to kneading, to folding, to shaping, there are so many different ways to handle and add strength to your doughs. So I hope this video can be helpful by demonstrating just a few of them. So let's get started. The dough I'm working with in this video is 20% whole wheat flour, 80% bread flour, and 82% hydration. It's a fairly wet dough, but most of the handling methods I'm going to demonstrate will work with doughs at 72% hydration or higher. Rubaud mixing involves repeatedly scooping the dough from the bottom with your hand in a cupped position. I really like to start with this method when making bread because it's one of the gentlest and cleanest ways to mix your ingredients and knead the dough directly in the bowl. Slap and fold is pretty self-explanatory from the name. You pick up the dough, slap it against a table, fold it over itself, then rotate it and repeat. It's definitely a more forceful way of kneading, but it's very useful in getting a wet, loose dough to come together pretty quickly. Just be careful not to strain the gluten too much when using this method. I usually stop once the dough starts tearing. For lamination, you first want to wet your hands and the countertop with water before stretching the dough into a large and very thin rectangle. Then fold the dough into thirds horizontally and vertically. You want to laminate early on in the bulk fermentation, after the gluten has fully developed, but before the dough has begun to rise. You could even use it to sprinkle in and incorporate mix-ins or layer different flavors of dough on top of each other. Stretch and folding is also pretty self-explanatory. First, wet your hands, then pick up the dough, stretch it up, and fold it over itself. This is a style of stretch and fold using two hands, and I'll show a one-handed version next. I also like to use this two-handed stretch and fold for incorporating mix-ins into the dough, which I'm demonstrating using a clip from my oat porridge sourdough video. The one-handed stretch and fold is probably the most popular method I've seen. Using a wet hand, simply grab a small section from the outside of the dough, stretch it up and fold it over across the middle, and work your way around the rest of the dough. Another popular method is coil folding. Wet your hands, then lift the dough from underneath and tuck the loose side beneath the rest of the dough. Repeat this on all four sides. It's a bit gentler than stretch and folding and builds good tension across the top of the dough. I usually pre-shape by loosening the dough from the sides of the bowl, then very gently coil folding it to lift it out of the bowl. Then I use my bench scraper to round it into a ball and leave it to rest for 20 to 30 minutes. Pre-shaping is typically used to divide a large mass of dough into individual portions. It's not always mandatory to pre-shape, but I still find it useful, even if you're only making enough dough for one loaf. It realigns the gluten, and I like that it gives you the opportunity to do a final check of the dough's strength and fermentation, so that you can add extra strength if needed and adjust the final shaping accordingly. This is probably the method of final shaping I use most often. It involves a bit of stitching, where you pull small sections from the outside of the dough inward. Stitching is a great way to get a tighter shape and extra support in your loaf. The next clip is from a spelt sourdough that I made a few weeks ago, and demonstrates another way to final shape with stitching. This shaping method generates a lot of strength and tension, but should mainly be used for loose or extensible doughs. Try avoiding this kind of shaping if you have a very strong or bubbly dough, as it could excessively degas it and could end up doing more harm than good. One of the best things about sourdough is how flexible the process is. You don't need to use every single one of these methods every time, but you can manipulate them and combine them according to your schedule or to your preferences, or according to what the dough needs and your desired outcome in the finished bread. I hope you were able to find this video helpful, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel for more sourdough and non-sourdough baking content.